I rise today because I know we need to throw a lifeline to small business by increasing their access to credit. They've got bills to pay, payroll checks to issue, and accounts payable mounting as they try and drive economic development. I supported the $30 billion lending increase this past week. I think the presiding officer did as well, because we know we've got to do all that we can to get small business cranked up here in our country. But I also supported it with the understanding that if we were going to finance $30 billion from the banking sector, that the very least we could do as well would be to increase lending without costing taxpayers a dime. And I want to speak specifically to a piece of legislation I introduced, and then introduced it in an amendment format as well, with bipartisan support. And that amendment would get government out of the way so that credit unions can increase their small business loan portfolios. Right now, credit unions are making small business loans, but there's an arbitrary cap on the size and how many loans that they can actually issue. And in every single state, in Illinois, in Colorado, in California, in North Carolina, there are credit unions that have money and are ready to responsibly lend some more money, but the federal government is literally standing in the way. And for one, I'm not willing to say to small businesses that they have to close their doors because of a federal cap on loans. In an economy like the one we now face, we have to change that situation. We all know that when small businesses expand and grow, that will be critical to pulling us out of this recession that we're in. In the last 15 years, small businesses have generated 2/3 of all the new jobs created in the United States, and they currently employ more than half of all Americans in the workforce. I travel across Colorado, as I know the senator from Illinois travels across Illinois, and I visit with small business people, and they continually ask me, where's the lending? I thought the banks were supposed to start lending again. And despite remaining profitable, small businesses have been unable to secure the loans that they need to make investments in inventory, expand, and ultimately hire new workers. And that's again why I introduced this bipartisan amendment to allow credit unions to ramp up small business lending without costing taxpayers a dime. I want to say that again, Mr. President. It would not cost taxpayers a dime to put these changes in current law. Let me speak to current law. Under current statute, credit unions are required to limit their small business lending to 12.5% of their credit union's total assets. But credit unions have run up against that cap, and the only thing keeping them from jump-starting our economy is an outmoded anti-growth law that I've referenced. Now, we introduced our bill last year. We heard from inside the Beltway banking representatives who said increasing credit union loans to small businesses wasn't going to be safe or sound. Now, I suspect they were more concerned about others making loans than they were about safety and soundness. We all know in this chamber that banks and credit unions regularly snipe at each other. It's almost like the Hatfields and the McCoys. But in the end, this isn't a bank or a credit union issue. This is a small business issue. So in coming to this updated bipartisan compromise, I've spoken to the Senate Banking Committee, the Treasury Department, and even the credit union's own regulator, the National Credit Union Administration. And they've all agreed to support our compromise that will safely and soundly increase small business lending by the credit union sector without costing Americans a dime. And best of all, most important of all, this legislation could lead to large-scale job creation in my home state of Colorado and around our country. The amendment takes the most well-capitalized, most experienced, and best-run credit unions that have run up against this lending cap that I've mentioned and allows them to meet the rising demand for small business loans. When they meet those conditions, their regulator will then allow that small business lending cap to slowly increase from the current 12.25%, I misspoke earlier, I said 12.50%, to a maximum of 27.5% of total assets. These credit unions, we know, are the most prudent financial institutions around, and nobody can argue that allowing them to throw a lifeline to a small business is irresponsible. So this amendment's a sound, surefire way to grow our economy by increasing credit unions' ability to lend to small businesses. Again, I want to underline, Mr. President, at no cost to the taxpayers, no cost to our taxpayers. The Credit Union National Association estimates that these sensible reforms would increase small business lending by $10 billion within the first year of enactment, with an increase of nearly $200 million in my home state of Colorado. It's just an example. This new access to credit is also expected to produce over 100,000 new jobs nationwide. Sounds to me like a pro-business, pro-jobs policy that we all can agree we need. The National Small Business Association and even the National Association of Realtors have gotten behind our efforts, and they're urging us to pass this important provision. Everybody here, I look around the chamber, I see my friend from Oklahoma, we know what shape our economy is in today. Small businesses continue to struggle to access credit as large banks have significantly cut back on Main Street lending. We've all met business owners who've experienced this credit squeeze. If we're going to finance $30 billion to increase lending, which I do support, we should at least take this small step to help small businesses at no cost to taxpayers. So, Mr. President, I close. I want to urge my colleagues to avoid the infighting that would have us believe that this is about banks or credit unions, because it's truly about our small business sector. We can't turn away entrepreneurs in this economic climate who want to create jobs and begin new businesses, especially because of our politics here in Washington. And I know there's not a single senator who wants to look a small business owner in the eye and who hasn't been able to get a loan because of an arbitrary government cap on small business lending. So let's unlock credit markets in Colorado and throughout the country. This amendment can be an important part of that effort. I want to work with colleagues on both sides of the aisle to quickly pass this amendment and allow our nation's small businesses to again set our country on a path towards job growth and prosperity in the future. Mr. President, I thank you for your attention, and I yield the floor.